Stop pretending you understand this. Get out. Now. Dr. Patricia Whitmore's voice sliced through the advanced calculus seminar at Riverside University. The prestigious professor pointed directly at Diana Carter, a black woman quietly mopping near the back wall. Every student's head snapped toward the janitor. "You're disrupting my class." Whitmore slammed her marker down and physically blocked the whiteboard with her body. "This is graduate-level mathematics, not your playground." She grabbed Diana's mop bucket and shoved it toward the door. Students pulled out phones, some smirking, others looking uncomfortable. Diana's hands trembled as she gathered her cleaning supplies. Have you ever been dismissed before you had a chance to prove who you really are? 3 days earlier, Riverside University's mathematics department buzzed with anticipation. The annual Goldstein Mathematics Competition had attracted the brightest graduate students from across the nation. A $50,000 fellowship and guaranteed publication opportunity hung in the balance. Dr. Patricia Whitmore stood before the packed auditorium, her credentials impressive by any measure. Department head for 8 years, author of 3 textbooks, consultant for NASA. She commanded respect wherever she went. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whitmore announced to the crowd of faculty, students, and wealthy donors, "this competition will showcase the pinnacle of mathematical excellence. We'll be filming every session for our National Mathematics Education Outreach Program." The cameras rolled as she continued. "We want the world to see what real mathematical brilliance looks like." In the back corner, Diana Carter pushed her cleaning cart silently between the rows of seats. At 45, she had perfected the art of invisibility. 8 years of night shifts had taught her exactly how to move through this world without drawing attention. "Excuse me, miss." A security guard appeared beside her cart. "Faculty restrooms are off-limits to staff like you. There's one downstairs in the basement." Diana nodded without protest. She had learned not to argue. Not when Maya's insulin depended on her keeping this job. The competition rules were straightforward. Public format with live audience. Problems displayed on massive screens. Solutions presented at the front podium. 3 judges would score based on accuracy, mathematical elegance, and presentation skills. "Think of it as intellectual gladiatorial combat," Whitmore joked to scattered laughter. "Only the strongest mathematical minds will survive." Sarah Mitchell, Whitmore's star graduate student from Stanford, was the obvious favorite. 2 published papers, a 4.0 GPA, and Whitmore's personal mentorship. The betting pools had already formed among the faculty. Diana continued her work, emptying trash bins and wiping down surfaces. Students barely glanced at her. When they did acknowledge her presence, it was usually to step around her or leave bigger messes for her to clean later. "Could you hurry up with that?" one graduate student complained as Diana cleaned around his feet. "Some of us are trying to prepare for serious academic work here." She mumbled an apology and moved faster. Dr. Whitmore's casual comments throughout the week had established the hierarchy clearly. "Standards matter in mathematics," she often said. "Not everyone belongs at this level of intellectual discourse." During faculty meetings, she spoke about maintaining institutional prestige and ensuring our competitors reflect the caliber of education we provide. The subtext was clear to anyone listening carefully. Professor Henry Kim, the emeritus faculty member serving as a competition judge, occasionally glanced at Diana with something that might have been curiosity. But he never spoke to her directly. The graduate students had their own cruel rituals. They would deliberately spill coffee near where Diana was working, then loudly discuss complex theorems while she cleaned around them, as if testing whether she was listening. "Do you think she understands any of this?" one whispered, not bothering to lower his voice. "Please. She probably thinks calculus is a type of calculator," another replied. Diana's jaw tightened, but she kept scrubbing. Maya's medical bills were $800 per month. The university's health insurance was the only thing standing between her daughter and diabetic ketoacidosis. Every night, Diana returned to her small apartment where textbooks lined the shelves like old friends. She would help Maya with homework, make sure she took her insulin, then sit at the kitchen table working through mathematical proofs until dawn. It was her secret pleasure, her private world where numbers danced in perfect harmony and equations revealed elegant truths about the universe. Mathematics had been her first love, before life got complicated. The competition format was designed for maximum drama. 3 rounds over 3 days, eliminating half the field each time. By the final day, only 4 contestants would remain for the ultimate mathematical showdown. "We've attracted some incredible talent this year," Whitmore told the local news reporter. "These young minds represent the future of American mathematics." The camera panned across the eager faces of the graduate students. Diana remained invisible in the background, pushing her cart past the edge of the frame. But late that night, as she cleaned the empty auditorium where tomorrow's competition would begin, Diana paused at the practice problems still written on the whiteboard. Her eyes traced the equations, spotting 3 separate errors in the setup. She looked around the empty room, then quietly picked up an eraser. What happens when the invisible becomes undeniable? Competition morning arrived with technical chaos. The main auditorium's projection system flickered and died just as the first round was scheduled to begin. Dr. Whitmore paced the stage like a caged predator while her graduate assistant frantically called IT support. "This is absolutely unacceptable," Whitmore snapped at the technician crawling under the display table. "We have live cameras rolling and 300 people waiting." The problem wasn't just equipment failure. The calibration test on the backup system showed a complex multivariable calculus equation, but something was fundamentally wrong with the parametric bounds. Every time they input the solution, the software crashes. Diana entered through the back door, wheeling her cart silently toward the far corner. She had hoped to finish cleaning before the competition started, but the delay meant working around the growing crowd of frustrated faculty and nervous students. "The surface integral keeps giving us negative volume," the IT technician explained to Whitmore. "That's mathematically impossible for this type of bounded region." Whitmore grabbed a marker and attacked the whiteboard with aggressive strokes. Her reputation was on the line. Donors were checking their watches. The live stream had thousands of viewers waiting for content that wasn't coming. "Here's the problem," she muttered, writing furiously. "Triple integral, cylindrical coordinates, bounded surface R equals 2 sine theta." She paused, staring at her work with growing frustration. Diana had moved closer, emptying trash bins near the front row. Her eyes drifted to the whiteboard despite herself. The mathematics pulled at her attention like gravity. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The partial derivative in the third term carried a negative sign, but when Dr. Whitmore had converted from Cartesian to cylindrical coordinates, the chain rule should have produced a positive coefficient. That sign error was cascading through the entire calculation, making the bounds integrate to negative pi instead of positive pi. Diana hesitated. She knew she should stay invisible, keep her head down, finish her work, and leave. But the mathematics was screaming at her. The error was so obvious, so fixable. And 300 people were sitting here waiting while a simple sign mistake held everything hostage. "Ma'am," Diana said quietly, approaching the front of the room. Her voice barely carried over the frustrated conversations. "Excuse me, ma'am." Dr. Whitmore didn't hear her. She was too busy explaining to the camera crew why they needed another delay. "Ma'am," Diana tried again, slightly louder. This time Whitmore turned. Her face showed pure irritation at the interruption. "What? We're dealing with a crisis here." Diana's throat felt dry. Every eye in the auditorium was turning toward her. Students were already pulling out phones. This was exactly what she had spent 8 years avoiding. "I think there might be a sign error," Diana said, pointing toward the whiteboard. "In your third term. The partial derivative when you convert the coordinates." The room went completely silent. Dr. Whitmore's expression shifted from irritation to disbelief to something approaching rage. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" Diana felt trapped in a spotlight she never wanted, but the mathematics was right there, begging to be corrected. The partial derivative of r with respect to theta. When the boundary surface is r equals 2 sine theta, the derivative should give you positive 2 cosine theta, not negative. A few students started snickering. Someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. The janitor thinks she knows calculus. Whitmore's voice dripped with condescension as she addressed the full auditorium. Well, this should be entertaining. The cleaning lady wants to lecture us about multivariable calculus. She gestured dramatically toward Diana. Please, enlighten us all about mathematics. Diana realized she had walked into a trap. But backing down now would be worse than never speaking up at all. I can show you, she said quietly. If you'd like. What happens when mathematics becomes a public execution? Diana's hands trembled as she approached the whiteboard. 300 pairs of eyes tracked her movement. Phone cameras lifted like weapons. The live stream chat exploded with comments she couldn't see but could imagine. Dr. Whitmore stepped aside with theatrical flair. By all means, Dr. Janitor, show us where I went wrong. The sarcasm in her voice drew nervous laughter from the graduate students. Diana picked up the marker. Her fingers felt clumsy around it, so different from the mop handle she was used to gripping. The mathematics on the board seemed to shimmer under the bright stage lights. The issue starts here, Diana began, her voice barely audible. She pointed to a specific term in the equation. When you converted from Cartesian to cylindrical coordinates, you applied the chain rule correctly, but— Speak up, Whitmore commanded. If you're going to waste everyone's time, at least do it loudly enough for us to hear your mistakes. Diana's voice grew stronger. When the boundary surface is ER equals 2 sine theta, and you take the partial derivative of ER with respect to theta, you get 2 cosine theta. But you wrote negative 2 cosine theta. She circled the problematic term. Several students leaned forward in their seats. Professor Kim, sitting in the judges section, raised an eyebrow. So what? Whitmore challenged. A simple sign. That doesn't explain why the entire system is failing. Actually, it does. Diana moved to a clear section of the board. When you integrate with the wrong sign, your bounds become negative pi instead of positive pi. That's why the volume calculation is coming out negative. Diana began working through the corrections step by step. Her handwriting, usually hidden in private notebooks, flowed across the board with surprising elegance. If you substitute the correct positive 2 cosine theta here, she worked through the chain rule derivation. Then apply it to the triple integral. The room grew quieter. Even the skeptical students were following her logic. The bounds should integrate from 0 to pi, not 0 to negative pi. That's why your software kept crashing. It was trying to calculate volume for a region that mathematically doesn't exist. Diana stepped back from the board. Her correction was clean, logical, and undeniably correct. The IT technician looked up from his laptop. Should I try inputting her numbers? This is ridiculous, Whitmore muttered, but she nodded reluctantly. The technician typed Diana's corrected values into the system. The display screen flickered once, then came to life with a perfect 3D rendering of the bounded surface. The volume calculation appeared in the corner, positive 4.7 cubic units. It works, the technician announced with obvious relief. A murmur rippled through the audience. Several students exchanged glances. Professor Kim scribbled something in his notepad. Sarah Mitchell, Whitmore's star student, looked genuinely impressed. That was actually elegant, she whispered to her neighbor. But Dr. Whitmore recovered quickly, her face flushing with barely concealed embarrassment. Well, she said with forced casualness, anyone can spot a sign error. That's basic pattern recognition, not mathematical understanding. She turned to address the full auditorium. This is exactly why we have formal mathematical education. Catching computational mistakes isn't the same as deep mathematical insight. Diana felt the dismissal like a physical blow. She had been right, had solved the problem that had stumped everyone else, but somehow that wasn't enough. "Since you seem so confident with elementary calculus," Whitmore continued, her voice taking on a cruel edge, "perhaps you'd like to observe our actual competition. You might learn something about real mathematics." Diana started to back toward her cleaning cart. "I should get back to work." "Oh no, I insist." Whitmore's smile was sharp as a blade. "We have an odd number of registered competitors anyway. We need someone for practice rounds." The cruel genius of the setup became clear. Whitmore was turning Diana's moment of correctness into public humiliation. "Consider yourself our control group," Whitmore announced to growing laughter. "Let's see what happens when someone without proper training tries to compete with real mathematicians." Diana felt trapped. Refusing would make her look cowardly. Accepting would put her mathematical abilities under a microscope she wasn't prepared for. "I don't think that's appropriate," she started to say. "Nonsense." Whitmore was enjoying herself now. "You just proved you have opinions about mathematics. Let's see if you can back them up when it matters." The audience was warming to the spectacle. This was better than any planned entertainment. David versus Goliath, except everyone expected David to get crushed. Professor Kim cleared his throat. "If the lady is willing, and if it doesn't interfere with her work responsibilities, I see no harm in additional participation." Diana looked at the faces around her, some curious, some mocking, some genuinely interested to see what would happen. The cameras were still rolling. The live stream was probably exploding with commentary. She thought about Maya, watching from home, about 8 years of staying invisible, of swallowing her pride, of pretending she was less than she was. "All right," Diana said quietly. "I'll try." The room erupted in surprised chatter. Whitmore's expression showed she hadn't expected Diana to accept. "Excellent," Whitmore said, regaining her composure. "Don't worry about winning anything. You're not eligible for prizes anyway. Think of it as educational." Diana realized she had just agreed to the most public mathematical examination of her life, and everyone expected her to fail. Can you prove yourself when the deck is stacked against you? The main auditorium transformed overnight into a mathematical coliseum. Giant screens hung from the ceiling. Professional lighting bathed the stage in stark white. Camera crews positioned themselves for optimal angles of what everyone assumed would be Diana's inevitable humiliation. Dr. Whitmore stood at the podium, addressing the packed crowd of over 300 faculty, students, donors, and media representatives. The energy crackled with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have an unusual addition to today's competition." Whitmore's voice carried perfectly through the sound system. "Diana Carter, a member of our custodial staff, will be participating as what we're calling an exhibition competitor." Laughter rippled through the audience. "She won't be eligible for prizes, of course, but she'll solve the same problems under the same time constraints as our graduate students. Think of it as a fascinating experiment in the difference between basic pattern recognition and true mathematical understanding." Diana sat in the competitors section, surrounded by brilliant young minds who had spent years preparing for this moment. She felt like an imposter in a borrowed chair. To her right sat Marcus Webb from MIT, competition veteran with 3 regional wins under his belt. He leaned over with genuine friendliness. "Hey, good luck up there. That correction yesterday was pretty slick." "Thanks," Diana managed. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from Stanford's postdoctoral program sat behind them, her notebook filled with elegant proofs and advanced theorems. She had published papers on analytical geometry that Diana had read late at night in her kitchen. James Park, the 23-year-old prodigy from Caltech, barely looked up from his own preparation. 4 published papers and a reputation for solving problems others couldn't even understand. The first official round began with abstract algebra. The problem appeared on the massive screens, a complex question about group theory and symmetrical transformations. "Competitors have 20 minutes," Whitmore announced. Begin. Diana stared at the problem. Her mind immediately began breaking it down, seeing patterns that others might miss. While the graduate students attacked it with formal proofs and rigorous notation, Diana approached it differently. She thought about symmetries as dance moves, each transformation needing a partner that could undo it. The mathematics became visual in her mind, like watching geometric shapes perform choreographed routines. Marcus scribbled frantically, his approach methodical and traditional. Elena covered her paper with formal definitions and lemma constructions. James worked with the cold precision of a machine. Diana's approach looked almost casual by comparison. Her solution took up half the space of the others, but every line flowed logically to the next. "Time!" Whitmore called. One by one, competitors presented their solutions. Marcus delivered a solid, textbook-perfect proof. Elena's work was rigorous and impressive. James's solution was technically flawless, but took 12 minutes to explain. Then Diana walked to the board. "If you think about symmetries like dance moves," she began, her voice steadier now, "each transformation has to have a partner that can undo it, so you're really just looking for partners." She demonstrated with simple, clear steps. Her explanation was intuitive, accessible, and mathematically sound. The audience followed every word. The group structure emerges naturally when you realize that every element must have an inverse, and the operation must be closed. It's like a perfect dance where no one is left without a partner. Professor Kim sat forward in his judging chair. The explanation was not only correct, but elegant in its simplicity. When the scores appeared, Diana had placed second behind Marcus Webb. The auditorium buzzed with surprised murmurs. "Interesting intuition," Whitmore said through gritted teeth, "though the explanation lacks the rigor we expect in formal mathematics. This is why proper training matters." But the damage was done. Diana hadn't just participated, she had competed. Social media exploded with hashtags. #JanitorMath began trending nationally. A local news reporter cornered Diana during the break. "So what's your educational background? Where did you study mathematics?" Diana deflected carefully. I like numbers. They make sense to me." The reporter pressed harder. "But surely you must have some formal training to compete at this level." "I read a lot," Diana said, escaping toward the restroom. Behind her, she could hear excited conversations. "Did you see how she explained group theory? My professor took 3 weeks to teach us that concept. She made it look so easy." But not everyone was impressed. A cluster of graduate students whispered near the coffee station. "It's obviously some kind of setup," one said. "Nobody just figures out abstract algebra from reading." "Whitmore's probably coaching her for publicity," another added. Professor Kim approached Diana quietly during lunch break. His expression was thoughtful, almost studying her. "That proof technique you used," he said carefully. "It reminded me of something. Have we met before?" Diana's heart skipped. "No, sir." "I don't think so." He nodded slowly, but his eyes remained curious. "Interesting. Very interesting." The afternoon brought topology and real analysis. With each round, Diana's performance grew stronger, more confident. And with each success, the whispers grew louder. What happens when excellence can no longer hide? The competition stretched across 3 grueling days, each round more demanding than the last. Diana found herself caught in an impossible balance between her janitorial duties and mathematical performance, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and determination. Day 2 began at 5 a.m. with Diana mopping the dormitory floors before the differential equations round. Her supervisor, Mrs. Henderson, cornered her by the supply closet. "Carter, I'm getting complaints about your cleaning quality. Trash bins not emptied, bathrooms half finished. What's going on?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll do better." "You better? There's a dozen people who'd love your job and insurance benefits." The threat hung heavy as Diana rushed to the auditorium for the morning competition. The differential equations problem appeared on screen. A complex boundary value problem involving heat distribution in a non-uniform medium. While other competitors set up elaborate Fourier series calculations, Diana visualized the heat flow like water finding its path through varied terrain. Her solution was unconventional but mathematically beautiful. She explained heat distribution using analogies to mountain streams, making the complex mathematics accessible to the entire audience. Elegant but unorthodox, Whitmore commented, docking points for unprofessional presentation style. Diana placed third, behind Marcus and Elena. During lunch break, Diana received a devastating phone call. "Mom, the insurance company denied the claim again." Maya's voice was tight with worry. "They want $800 for this month's insulin before they'll process the appeal." Diana's chest constricted. "I'll figure something out, baby. Maybe you should skip the math competition and pick up those extra cleaning shifts Mr. Rodriguez offered." Diana looked around at the mathematicians surrounding her, at the cameras documenting every moment, at the world watching her prove herself. "I can't quit now. Mom, it's just a competition. My medicine is more important." The afternoon topology challenge nearly broke her. Diana was explaining how soap bubble geometry could solve manifold problems when the presentation screen malfunctioned, leaving her looking unprepared and flustered. "Technical difficulties don't excuse poor planning," Whitmore announced. "Real mathematicians prepare for contingencies." Diana finished her explanation without visual aids, but the damage was done. She dropped to fourth place. That evening, exhausted and discouraged, Diana was cleaning the faculty lounge when she overheard Whitmore on a phone call. "Don't worry about the publicity stunt. She'll crack under pressure tomorrow. Then we can get back to serious mathematics." The words stung because Diana was starting to crack. Her body ached from lack of sleep. Her mind felt foggy from stress. The financial pressure of Maya's medical needs pressed against her chest like a weight. Day 3 morning brought number theory. The problem involved prime factorization using advanced techniques. Diana approached it through ancient Chinese mathematical concepts, applying the Chinese remainder theorem in ways that surprised even Professor Kim. "How exactly does a janitor know about Ming Dynasty mathematics?" Whitmore asked pointedly during Diana's presentation. The question landed like a trap. Diana deflected awkwardly. I watch a lot of documentaries." The audience laughed, but it wasn't kind laughter anymore. Suspicion was growing. Social media had exploded overnight. #janitor math videos accumulated millions of views. But the comments section was brutal. "Obviously fake. Nobody learns advanced math from documentaries. This is some diversity publicity stunt. Real janitors don't solve topology problems." The racist undertones were impossible to ignore. Diana's phone buzzed constantly with notifications she was afraid to read. Her ex-husband Carlos called during the lunch break. "Diana, what the hell are you doing on TV? Maya showed me these videos. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm competing in mathematics." "You're playing dress-up in a world where you don't belong. Come back to reality before you humiliate our daughter." The real analysis round that afternoon pushed Diana to her breaking point. The problem required proving the existence of certain mathematical objects using constructive methods. Her solution was brilliant, but her presentation faltered under the weight of exhaustion and emotional pressure. "Are you feeling all right, Miss Carter?" Whitmore asked with false concern. "You seem overwhelmed by the complexity." Diana's hands shook as she finished writing. She had solved the problem correctly, but her explanation was rushed and unclear. She placed fourth again, barely holding on to her position in the final round. That night, Diana sat alone in the empty auditorium after everyone had gone home. She was supposed to be cleaning, but instead she stared at the whiteboard covered in erased equations. Her phone rang. Maya's doctor. "Mrs. Carter, I need to discuss Maya's treatment plan. The insurance situation is becoming critical." Diana closed her eyes. "How long do we have?" "A few days, maybe a week." After that? The conversation ended with Diana promising to resolve the financial situation immediately. She could pick up double shifts, work weekends, sacrifice sleep entirely, or she could drop out of the competition and disappear back into invisibility. But as she sat in that empty auditorium, surrounded by the ghosts of mathematical arguments and theoretical proofs, Diana realized something had changed. For 3 days, she had been visible. Her mind had been engaged. She had felt alive in ways she had forgotten were possible. Only 4 competitors remained: Diana, Marcus Webb, Elena Rodriguez, and James Park. Tomorrow's final round will be broadcast live nationally on educational television and streaming platforms. Professor Kim approached her as she finally began her cleaning duties. "Diana," he said quietly, "whatever happens tomorrow, you've already proven something important." "What's that?" "That mathematics doesn't care about your job title. It only cares whether you understand it." Diana looked at the equations still faintly visible on the erased whiteboard. Tomorrow she would face her greatest mathematical challenge while the entire country watched. She thought about Maya, about 8 years of invisible brilliance, about the choice between safety and authenticity. "Professor Kim," she said, "what if I told you this competition might cost me everything?" He studied her face carefully. "Then I'd ask, what will it cost you if you don't finish? Can you sacrifice everything for a chance to be seen?" Professor Kim found Diana in the empty mathematics library at 11 p.m., 3 hours before the final round. She sat surrounded by advanced textbooks, working through practice problems with the focused intensity of someone who had found her true calling. Diana Carter, Ph.D. Mathematics, Howard University, 1998. Diana's pencil froze mid-calculation. She looked up to find Kim standing in the doorway, holding a printed research paper. Dissertation on Geometric Applications of Nonlinear Differential Systems, published in Journal of Applied Mathematics, 2000. Highly cited work, actually. The blood drained from Diana's face. "How did you—" "Your proof techniques." Kim approached slowly, setting the paper on her table. "I've been teaching for 40 years. I recognize mathematical DNA when I see it. The way you visualize complex problems, your intuitive approach to abstract concepts, it's not self-taught curiosity. It's doctoral-level training." Diana stared at her own research paper, her maiden name printed clearly under the title. Dr. Diana Washington. A lifetime ago. "The question is," Kim continued gently, "why is a Ph.D. mathematician mopping floors when she should be teaching?" The carefully constructed walls Diana had built around her past began crumbling. 8 years of hiding, of pretending to be less than she was, of accepting condescension as the price of survival. "You want the real story?" Diana's voice was bitter. "I graduated in 1998, right when the tech bubble burst. Academic jobs disappeared overnight. I took a temporary position here to pay bills while I looked for something permanent." Kim sat across from her, listening without judgment. "Then Maya was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Do you know what insulin costs without insurance? What continuous glucose monitors cost? What emergency room visits cost when your 6-year-old goes into diabetic ketoacidosis?" Her hands trembled as she spoke. "The university's health insurance was better than any adjunct position offered, so I stayed temporarily. 1 year became 2, 5, became 8. "Patricia doesn't know, does she?" Diana laughed harshly. "Some days I wonder if she'd treat me differently if she knew. Other days, I'm terrified I already know the answer." Kim leaned forward. "Diana, there's something else you need to know about tomorrow's competition. The winner doesn't just get the fellowship money." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "They get offered a full-time faculty position. Associate Professor Track, with benefits, research funding, and job security." Diana's breath caught. the position she had wanted for 8 years, the career she had sacrificed for Maya's survival, the job I should have had all along, the job you're qualified for right now. Diana realized the stakes had completely changed. Tomorrow wasn't just about proving herself to Whitmore or gaining public recognition. It was about reclaiming the life she had put on hold. If I compete tomorrow, my PhD will be discovered publicly. The charade will be over. Is that such a bad thing? Diana looked at the equations scattered across the table, at her daughter's photo tucked between the pages of her notebook, at the research paper bearing her maiden name. I'm tired of being invisible, Professor Kim. What happens when hiding becomes more painful than exposure? Diana arrived at the auditorium 30 minutes early, hoping to center herself before the cameras rolled. Instead, she found Dr. Whitmore waiting at the podium with a manila folder and a predatory smile. The packed auditorium buzzed with anticipation. 500 people filled every seat. News crews positioned cameras for optimal drama. The live stream had already attracted over 50,000 viewers waiting for the final mathematical showdown. Before we begin today's championship round, Whitmore announced, her voice carrying perfectly through the sound system, I have a rather shocking revelation about one of our competitors. Diana's stomach dropped. She saw Professor Kim in the judges section, his face tight with concern. It seems our exhibition participant has been somewhat economical with the truth. Whitmore opened the folder with theatrical precision. Dr. Diana Carter, PhD in mathematics from Howard University, 1998. She displayed Diana's doctoral diploma on the giant screen. Gasps rippled through the audience like a shockwave. Published researcher in nonlinear differential systems, highly cited academic work. Whitmore's voice dripped with calculated outrage. She has allowed us all to participate in what amounts to an elaborate deception. The crowd erupted in confused chatter. Students pulled out phones, filming Diana's mortified face. The live stream chat exploded with comments ranging from surprise to anger. Now, I don't question Dr. Carter's credentials, Whitmore continued, turning the knife expertly. But I do question her integrity. For 3 days, she has allowed faculty, students, and media to treat this as some inspiring underdog story. Meanwhile, she was laughing at us behind her mop bucket. Diana felt exposed under the harsh lights, like a fraud on trial. Every camera lens felt like an accusation. A student in the third row shouted, "So this whole thing was fake." Another voice, "Did you think we were stupid?" The questions came faster, angrier. Why did you lie to us? Were you trying to make us look like idiots? Diana stood frozen at her table, surrounded by hostile faces. The mathematical confidence she had built over 3 days crumbled under the weight of public judgment. She started, her voice barely audible. I never meant to deceive anyone. Then why the charade? Whitmore pressed, clearly enjoying Diana's discomfort. Surely someone with your qualifications doesn't need to resort to such theatrical manipulation for employment? The question hung like a blade. Diana realized Whitmore was implying something darker, that her inability to secure an academic position suggested deeper professional problems. Dr. Carter, Whitmore continued with false sympathy, is there perhaps something in your background that explains why someone with a PhD has been reduced to custodial work? Some issue that legitimate academic institutions found concerning? The insinuation was clear to everyone in the room. The implication that Diana's career failure suggested incompetence, or worse, some kind of academic misconduct. Diana felt the walls closing in. The crowd was turning hostile. The cameras captured every moment of her humiliation. Social media would crucify her as a fraud who had manipulated everyone's sympathy. She started walking toward the exit, just wanting to escape the nightmare her life had become. I'm sorry, she whispered into the microphone clipped to her shirt. I never wanted this to happen. The auditorium fell silent except for the clicking of camera shutters and the soft buzz of live streams. As Diana reached the door, her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Mom, I don't care what they say. You're still the smartest person I know. Don't let them make you disappear again. Diana stopped with her hand on the exit handle. Behind her, Professor Kim's voice cut through the silence. Diana, the mathematics don't care about the drama. The question is simple. Will you solve the problem or won't you? Diana turned around. 500 faces stared at her, some hostile, some curious, some genuinely supportive. The giant screen still displayed the final championship problem, waiting for someone brave enough to approach it. She thought about 8 years of hiding, of accepting less than she deserved, of letting other people define her worth. You want to know why I've been mopping floors with a PhD? Diana's voice grew stronger as she walked back toward the front. Because sometimes survival matters more than pride. But today, I choose pride. Can you find strength in your lowest moment? Diana walked back to the competitors' table with deliberate steps. The auditorium remained dead silent, 500 people holding their breath. The live stream viewer count had exploded to over 200,000 as word spread across social media about the dramatic confrontation. The final problem materialized on the giant screens, and even the experienced mathematicians in the audience gasped. It was a monster. A complex optimization problem that wove together differential equations, linear algebra, and game theory into a mathematical labyrinth that had stumped researchers for 15 years. The Hartley-Morrison resource optimization problem, Professor Kim announced. Find the optimal strategy for resource allocation in a 3-player competitive system where each player's moves affect the other's payoff matrices, subject to continuously changing environmental constraints. You have 90 minutes. Marcus Webb immediately dove into traditional game theory approaches, covering his paper with Nash equilibrium calculations. Elena Rodriguez attacked it through linear programming, setting up constraint matrices with mechanical precision. James Park attempted advanced calculus of variations, his work flowing across multiple sheets. Diana stared at the problem for a full 5 minutes without writing anything. The cameras zoomed in on her face, expecting to capture the moment she finally met her mathematical match. Instead, she was seeing something entirely different. While her competitors treated this as pure mathematics, Diana saw the real world bleeding through the equations. 3 communities sharing limited resources, water rights during drought, energy distribution during the crisis. The mathematics mattered, but so did understanding what people actually needed to survive. She picked up her marker and approached the main whiteboard, her movements now confident and purposeful. This problem has been unsolved for 15 years, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system, because everyone's been asking the wrong question. The audience leaned forward. Even her fellow competitors paused their frantic calculations to listen. We're not optimizing for mathematical elegance. We're optimizing for human survival. Diana began sketching a different kind of diagram, not abstract mathematical constructs, but recognizable real-world scenarios. When you model this as 3 communities competing for water during drought, the mathematical landscape changes completely. She worked with fluid grace, her years of hidden brilliance finally unleashed in full public view. The mathematics flowed from her marker like poetry written in numbers and symbols. The environmental constraints aren't random variables, they follow predictable seasonal patterns. If you map them to actual climate data from the last century, Diana integrated meteorological patterns into the mathematical framework, showing how environmental cycles created predictable resource fluctuations. The key insight is here. She circled a section of her work. When resources reach critical scarcity levels, traditional competitive optimization breaks down completely. The crowd watched, mesmerized, as Diana demonstrated something remarkable. That cooperation wasn't just morally superior to competition, it was mathematically superior. The calculus proves that selfish strategies lead to system collapse. But if you model cooperative resource sharing, She filled another section of the board with elegant equations. The optimal solution requires what economists call enlightened collaboration. Dr. Whitmore stood up, her face flushed with desperation. That's not a mathematical solution. That's sociology masquerading as mathematics. Diana turned to face her directly, no longer the intimidated janitor but a mathematician in her element. Dr. Whitmore, with respect, you're solving the wrong problem. You're optimizing for individual maximum gain when the system requires collective optimization. Your approach leads to a Nash equilibrium that's suboptimal for all players. The first key line hit its target perfectly. Whitmore's face went white as Diana exposed the fundamental flaw in traditional approaches to the problem. Diana continued her demonstration, showing how cooperative strategies created better mathematical outcomes than competitive ones. Her proof was rigorous, innovative, and beautiful. The kind of breakthrough that redefines entire fields of study. Professor Kim stood up in the judges section. Diana, this is extraordinary work. Can you demonstrate the stability of your solution under varying constraint parameters? Diana smiled. Of course. She filled the remaining whiteboard space with additional proofs, showing how her cooperative model remained stable even under extreme resource scarcity. Her mathematics was flawless, her insights revolutionary. The auditorium erupted in applause. Marcus Webb stopped working entirely and joined the ovation. Elena Rodriguez stood up, clapping enthusiastically. Even James Park looked at Diana's solution with genuine admiration. But Diana wasn't finished. She turned to address the auditorium directly, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had found her power. Mathematics isn't about proving you're smarter than everyone else. It's about finding truth. And the truth here is that this problem remained unsolved for 15 years because everyone was asking the wrong question. The second key line landed like a thunderbolt. The audience fell completely silent as Diana reframed not just the mathematical problem, but the entire philosophy of how mathematics should serve humanity. Dr. Whitmore made one last desperate attempt to regain control. The competition has rules. Format matters. Presentation standards matter. Diana looked directly at Whitmore, her eyes calm but unyielding. You're absolutely right, Dr. Whitmore. Format and presentation do matter tremendously, so let me present this solution with the rigor it deserves. Diana rewrote her entire solution in perfect academic format. Her handwriting transformed from practical to elegant. She cited relevant literature, acknowledged prior research, and presented her breakthrough with flawless mathematical formality. When she stepped back from the board, the silence was deafening. Professor Kim rose slowly from his chair, his voice filled with awe. In 43 years of teaching mathematics, I have never witnessed a more elegant solution to an intractable problem. Dr. Carter, you haven't just solved the Hartley-Morrison problem, you've revolutionized it. The auditorium exploded in sustained applause. People stood, cheered, and recorded the moment when the invisible became undeniable. Marcus Webb approached Diana with his hand extended. That was incredible. I've been working on resource optimization for 3 years, and I never thought to approach it from a humanitarian angle. Elena Rodriguez shook Diana's hand enthusiastically. Your mathematical intuition is extraordinary. Have you considered publishing this approach? Even James Park, the Caltech prodigy, looked at Diana with newfound respect. That proof technique for stability analysis, I've never seen anything like it. Dr. Whitmore stood frozen at the podium, watching her carefully constructed humiliation backfire spectacularly. The cameras captured every moment as Diana transformed from victim to victor in front of the entire mathematical world. But the biggest victory was quiet and personal. Diana had stopped hiding. What happens when excellence refuses to stay invisible? As the applause finally died down, Dean Margaret Stevens emerged from the VIP section and approached the microphone. Diana had never seen the university's highest academic administrator in person, but everyone knew her reputation for making decisions that shaped careers. Dr. Carter, Dean Stevens began, her voice carrying absolute authority. I believe this institution owes you far more than an apology. The auditorium fell silent again, sensing another dramatic shift. What you've accomplished here today has implications that extend far beyond this competition. The Hartley-Morrison resource optimization problem wasn't just an academic exercise. Diana felt a chill of anticipation. 6 months ago, the city of Los Angeles contracted our university to solve their water management crisis. 15 of our best faculty members have been working on it unsuccessfully. The consulting contract is worth $2.8 million. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Diana's solution wasn't just mathematically elegant, it was worth millions in real-world application. Professor Kim stood up, his face lit with realization. Margaret, are you saying Diana just solved the LA water project? That's exactly what I'm saying. Dean Stevens turned back to Diana. Dr. Carter, would you be interested in leading the implementation of your solution? The city is prepared to offer a substantial consulting position. Diana's mind reeled. The competition prize, a faculty position, and $50,000 suddenly seemed insignificant compared to this unexpected opportunity. But Dean Stevens wasn't finished. Furthermore, I believe our mathematics department should offer you the Goldstein Endowed Chair in Applied Mathematics. It comes with full tenure, research funding, and the freedom to develop your humanitarian approach to mathematical problem-solving. The audience erupted again. Diana realized she was being offered not just a job, but the chance to revolutionize how mathematics was taught and applied. Dr. Whitmore stepped forward, trapped by 500 witnesses and live cameras. Her voice was strained but audible. Dr. Carter's work today has been truly exceptional. She would be a valuable addition to our faculty. The third key line, Whitmore's reluctant admission, was forced out by circumstances she could no longer control. But Diana was looking past the university politics to Maya in the audience, who had arrived with Professor Kim's help. Her daughter's face glowed with pride. Dean Stevens, Diana said carefully, that depends on whether this institution is ready for mathematics that serves communities instead of just competing with them. I believe we are, Dr. Carter. The question is, are you ready to change the world? What happens when the invisible becomes unstoppable? 6 months later, Diana stood before a packed auditorium teaching Applied Mathematics for Social Good to an unprecedented mix of graduate students, undergraduates, city planners, and community activists. The nameplate on her office door read, Dr. Diana Carter, Goldstein Professor of Applied Mathematics. Her revolutionary approach to resource optimization was being implemented in 12 major cities. Universities worldwide were restructuring their mathematics programs around her humanitarian model. Most importantly, her students were learning that numbers could heal communities, not just impress colleagues. Professor Carter, a graduate student raised her hand, when you were working as a janitor here, did you ever imagine you'd be teaching in this same auditorium? Diana smiled, looking out at the eager faces. Every night when I was mopping these floors, I was already here in my mind. Mathematics never left me. I just needed to find the courage to let it be seen. Maya, now a freshman studying pre-med with full health insurance and no financial stress, beamed from the front row. In a faculty meeting the previous week, Dr. Whitmore had addressed the department with words that still echoed. I was wrong about Dr. Carter, not just about her credentials, but about what makes a great mathematician. She's teaching us that true excellence isn't about exclusion, it's about connection. The LA Water Project had saved the city $40 million in infrastructure costs, while ensuring equitable distribution to underserved communities. Diana's mathematical models were being adapted for climate change mitigation, urban planning, and healthcare resource allocation. As the semester ended, Diana noticed the new janitor, Roberto, glancing at the advanced differential equations still visible on her whiteboard. Interesting approach to the boundary value problem, he said quietly while emptying the trash. Diana paused her packing. Would you like to discuss it? His eyes lit up. I have a degree in engineering from El Salvador, but nothing, Diana interrupted gently. Mathematics doesn't care about your accent or your work visa status. It only cares whether you understand it. Diana's story reminds us that brilliance doesn't announce itself with titles or credentials. It whispers in night shifts, survives in silence, and waits patiently for someone brave enough to ask the right question. How many brilliant minds are invisible in your world right now? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember their own hidden potential. Subscribe to Black Voices Uncut for more stories about extraordinary people in ordinary places. And next time you're tempted to judge someone by their job title, remember Diana, the mathematics of human potential is infinite. We just need the courage to see it.
Reality isn't always easy to hear, but that's exactly why we tell it. At Black Voices Uncut, we go beyond the surface, showing what others won't. If you value unfiltered truth, hit like, comment your perspective, and subscribe. Every voice matters, and every truth deserves to be heard.
You smell like wet dog, and that nappy rat's nest makes everyone sick. Sit in the back where trash belongs. Brock Hartley grabbed Gianna's braid and hacked through it with scissors. 8 inches of hair her grandmother had braided hit the floor. Students started recording on their phones immediately. He held her severed braid high. Finally, this classroom doesn't stink. Gianna stood without tears. She picked up her braid. Why would you do that? Because watching you squirm is hilarious. He threw it in the trash. The teacher hadn't arrived. Nobody helped. Gianna sat back down, breathing steady while Brock celebrated with his friends. He thought she was easy. Quiet transfer student. Harmless target. 3 days later, he'd learn the truth in front of everyone. What happened next would absolutely destroy him. This wasn't the first time Brock Hartley had targeted Gianna Ingram. It was just the first time he'd gone this far. Gianna had transferred to Westfield High 6 months ago, 3 weeks after her grandmother died. She moved in with her aunt and showed up to senior year halfway through, which already made her an outsider. Being one of only 12 black students in a school of 800 made it worse. She kept her head down, sat in the back, ate lunch alone with a book, never caused problems. That's exactly why Brock noticed her. He was Westfield's star linebacker, the kind of guy who'd been popular since elementary school because his dad owned half the commercial real estate in town. Brock had that specific confidence that comes from never facing real consequences. Teachers laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny, and for 6 months, he'd been testing Gianna to see what he could get away with. It started small, comments in the hallway. "Can I touch your hair? I've never felt black girl hair before." "You're pretty for a black girl. You don't even look that black. Do you wash that or does it just stay like that?" Gianna ignored him every time. Earbuds in, volume up, keep walking. She learned early that responding only made it worse, but silence to someone like Brock looked like permission. The comments got bolder. He started saying them louder, making sure other students heard. Some kids laughed. Most looked uncomfortable and said nothing. A few, like Tessa Murray, whispered that it was messed up, but nobody said it loud enough for Brock to hear. Mrs. Caldwell would occasionally interrupt with "Brock, that's enough," before returning to the lesson. She never sent him to the office, never called his parents, so Brock kept going. 2 weeks ago, he knocked Gianna's textbook off her desk. Last week, he asked if she was related to the janitor. 3 days ago, he told her to sit in the back because the sun might burn you darker. Every time, Gianna stayed quiet. Every time, Brock got more confident. This morning started like any other Monday. Gianna arrived at Mrs. Caldwell's history class 15 minutes early. She sat in her usual seat by the window, pulled out her physics textbook, and put her earbuds in. She had an exam next period. Get through senior year, get into college, get out. That was the plan. The classroom filled around her. Tessa came in with friends and sat 3 rows ahead. Dax and Wyatt, Brock's closest friends, took seats near the door. Other students filtered in, laughing about weekend parties. Gianna kept her eyes on her textbook when she felt someone standing next to her desk. She looked up. Brock stood there with that smile he wore when he was about to say something he thought was clever. Dax and Wyatt were behind him, phones already out. Gianna pulled out one earbud. "Can I help you?" "Yeah. Serious question. No judgment. Brock leaned against her desk. She waited. Do you people actually wash your hair? Because I've been sitting 2 rows up for 6 months and I swear I can smell it. A few students laughed. Most went quiet. Tessa looked back with sympathy but didn't say anything. Gianna's hand tightened on her textbook. Her breathing stayed even, 4 counts in, 4 counts out, the way her grandmother taught her when she was young and struggling to control her temper. I wash my hair. Can you move? I'm studying. See? I ask a simple question and she gets defensive. Why is it always like that? Maybe because your question was disrespectful, Gianna said quietly. Disrespectful? I'm curious about cultural differences. That's called being educated. Wyatt laughed from the doorway. Bro, you're gonna make her cry. I've never cried, Gianna said. Yeah, exactly. That's weird. Normal people show emotions. You just sit here like a robot. He reached out suddenly and grabbed her braid. Gianna jerked back, but he held it. Look how thick this is. This thing probably weighs 5 pounds. Let go. Gianna's voice went cold. Several students were watching now. Tessa had her phone out but wasn't recording. I'm just looking. Relax. That's when he pulled out the scissors. Later, people would argue about where they came from. Either way, he had them open while holding Gianna's braid. Brock, what are you doing? Tessa's voice was small. I'm helping. She's been complaining about how heavy this is. Don't. Gianna's hand came up, but Brock held her braid higher. You smell like wet dog, he said loud enough for everyone. And that nappy rat's nest makes everyone sick. Sit in the back where trash belongs. Then he cut. The sound of scissors slicing through hair filled the classroom. Snip, snip, snip. He sawed through quickly. 8 inches of carefully braided hair separated from her head. Gianna's hand reached back to where her braid used to be. Her fingers touched the shortened ends. She froze. Phones came out from every direction. Students started recording. Brock held up the severed braid like a trophy, turning so every camera got a good angle. There. Finally. This classroom doesn't stink anymore. Silence except for phones capturing everything. Gianna stood slowly. She moved with strange precision, weight evenly distributed, posture straight. She looked at Brock for 3 seconds. Then she bent down and picked up the severed braid. She held it in both hands like something precious. Why would you do that? Her voice wasn't shaking. It was steady and quiet. Brock grinned. Because watching you squirm is hilarious. He grabbed the braid from her hands, walked to the trash can, and dropped it in. It's just hair. Learn to take a joke. The classroom door opened. Mrs. Caldwell walked in 5 minutes late with coffee. She glanced up and frowned at students on their phones. Phones away. We have a lot to cover today. She walked to her desk without noticing the hair on the floor, without seeing Gianna frozen by the window. Tessa raised her hand. Mrs. Caldwell, Brock just... I said phones away, Tessa. Tessa lowered her hand. She looked back at Gianna with apology in her eyes. Gianna sat down slowly. She placed her textbook on the desk. She folded her hands, and she took one long breath that lasted exactly 4 counts in and 4 counts out. Nobody in that room knew it yet, but they'd just witnessed someone with years of discipline choose not to respond with violence she was capable of. They'd just recorded evidence of the biggest mistake Brock Hartley would ever make. In 3 days, every single one of them would understand what that breathing technique meant. By second period, everyone knew what Brock had done. The video spread through the school like wildfire. Students posted it to Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. Within an hour, it had 2,000 views just from Westfield students. By lunch, the entire school was talking about it. Gianna walked into the cafeteria and felt 300 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Conversation stopped. People nudged their friends and pointed. Phones came out again, recording her entrance. She kept her face neutral and walked to her usual table in the back corner, the table where she always sat alone. Her hair was different now. She'd gone to the bathroom between classes and evened it out, but there was no hiding what happened. 8 inches gone. The braid her grandmother had woven was sitting in a trash can. Gianna pulled out her lunch and a book. Same routine. Eat quickly, read, avoid eye contact, get through the day. Across the cafeteria, Brock sat at the center table surrounded by his crowd. Football players, cheerleaders, the kids who'd been popular forever. He was laughing, telling the story with dramatic gestures while friends watched the video again. "Her face when I did it," Brock said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Priceless." Dax scrolled through comments. "Dude, you're blowing up. This thing's got 5,000 views. See? People think it's funny." Brock took a bite of his sandwich. "Everyone except her." "Some people are saying you went too far," Wyatt said, showing his phone. Brock glanced at it and shrugged. "Some people are soft." He looked across the cafeteria and spotted Gianna sitting alone, reading like nothing had happened. That irritated him. She should be crying. She should be hiding in a bathroom. Instead, she looked completely calm. "Watch this," Brock said, standing up. "Bro, maybe leave it alone," Dax said. "I'm just going to talk to her." Brock grabbed his phone and started recording as he walked toward Gianna's table. Students noticed immediately. The cafeteria went quiet. Gianna saw him coming but didn't look up from her book. Brock reached her table and stood there, phone pointed at her. "Hey, Gianna, got a second?" She didn't respond. "Come on, don't be like that. I actually wanted to apologize." That got her attention. She looked up slowly. "You want to apologize?" "Yeah." Brock smiled. "I feel bad about this morning. I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot." Students were gathering now, forming a circle around her table. Phones came out everywhere. Gianna closed her book. "Okay, I'm listening. So here's what I'm thinking. I heard you're into martial arts or whatever, like karate, right?" She didn't confirm or deny, just waited. "My cousin does karate, and I wrestle, varsity team, been doing it since I was 8. So I thought, maybe we could settle this with a friendly demonstration, spar a little, no hard feelings." "Spar?" Gianna repeated. "Yeah, friendly, nothing serious." Brock was still recording, playing to his audience. "Here's the deal. If you can land one hit on me, just one clean hit, I'll apologize in front of the whole school. I'll admit I was wrong." He paused. "But if you can't land a hit, then you admit you're overreacting about the hair thing. You tell everyone it wasn't a big deal. Fair?" The cafeteria had gone completely silent. 200 students watched. Tessa stood up from her table. "Brock, that's not fair. She's half your size." "I'm giving her a chance to prove herself," Brock said. "Unless she's scared." Wyatt joined the circle, also recording. "Come on, Gianna. You've been walking around all quiet for 6 months. Let's see what you're actually about." Gianna looked at Brock for a long moment. Her face showed nothing. "What are the exact terms?" she asked. Brock grinned. He hadn't expected her to consider it. "Friday after school. Gym. We'll make it official. Get Coach Ramsey to supervise. Protective gear, the whole thing. 1 3-minute round. You land one clean hit that the coach confirms, you win. If you don't, I win. Deal?" "And if I win, you apologize publicly. In front of everyone. I'll own it. And if you win, I say the hair wasn't a big deal." "Exactly, see? I'm being totally reasonable." Gianna was quiet for 10 seconds. The silence stretched. Students shifted uncomfortably. Then she spoke, her voice clear and calm. "Friday, 4 p.m., gymnasium." The cafeteria erupted. Students started talking all at once, phones typing furiously. Within seconds, the news was spreading beyond the cafeteria to the entire school. Brock's grin got wider. "There we go. Finally some backbone. This is going to be fun." He turned to his friends, laughing. "Did you get that? Tell me you got that." "Got it," Dax confirmed. "Perfect. This is going to be the most viral thing this school's ever seen." They walked back to their table, already replaying the video. Gianna sat alone again. She opened her book, but she didn't turn the page. Her eyes weren't moving. She was breathing that same slow, controlled way. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Tessa walked over and sat down without asking. "Gianna, you don't have to do this. Brock wrestles. He's 200 pounds. "I know it's not fair," Gianna said quietly. "Then why did you agree?" Gianna looked up. "Because he's going to keep doing this, to me, to someone else. He does it because nobody stops him. But you could get hurt." "I could." Gianna's voice was steady. "Or I could show him what happens when you assume quiet means weak." Tessa didn't know what to say. She sat there for a moment, then stood. "I hope you destroy him." Gianna almost smiled. "We'll see." By the end of lunch, the whole school knew. By the end of the day, students were taking sides. Some thought Brock would finally get what he deserved. Most thought Gianna was crazy. The video of Brock cutting her hair had 5,000 views. The video of her accepting his challenge had 10,000. Someone created a hashtag, Gianna vs. Brock. Someone else started a poll. 83% voted for Brock. The comments were brutal. She's gonna get destroyed. This is embarrassing to watch. Brock wrestles varsity. She doesn't stand a chance. A few comments defended her. Maybe she knows something we don't. Quiet people are quiet for a reason. I've never seen her react to anything. That's either really weak or really dangerous. But those were drowned out by predictions she'd lose. Gianna saw all of it. She scrolled through comments after school, sitting in her aunt's car. She read every prediction that she'd lose, every comment calling her stupid. Then she put her phone away. She had 3 days until the entire school would pack into the gymnasium. 3 days until everyone would learn the truth about who she really was. 3 days to prepare for the most important lesson she'd ever teach. Vice Principal Ashford heard about the challenge before the final bell rang. By 3 p.m., both Brock and Gianna sat in his office, chairs on opposite sides of the room. Ashford was in his mid-50s, tired, and had dealt with Brock's behavior for 4 years. He rubbed his temples. "We don't condone violence at Westfield High. Fighting results in immediate suspension. It's not a fight, sir." Brock leaned forward, all respectful energy. "It's supervised sparring for conflict resolution, educational purposes." "Educational purposes," Ashford repeated flatly. "Yes, sir. We had a misunderstanding. This is us working it out in a controlled environment. Builds character. Isn't that what school's about?" Ashford looked at Gianna. "Is this what you want?" "Yes," she said. "You understand he's significantly larger. He has wrestling experience." "I understand. And you still want to do this?" "Yes." Ashford sighed. Brock's father was on the school board. This was already viral. If he shut it down, angry parents would call about censorship. "If we allow this, it's done properly. Coach Ramsey supervises. Protective gear mandatory. First clean body shot ends it immediately. Coach has final say." "That works," Brock said. "Fine," Gianna said. "I want this in writing. Both sign. Your parents sign. The school is not liable for injuries." They both nodded. 20 minutes later, the terms were official. Friday, 4 p.m., main gymnasium. 1 3-minute round. If Gianna landed one clean strike that Coach Ramsey confirmed, Brock would publicly apologize, write a 5-page essay on respect, and be suspended from the next 2 football games. If Gianna failed to land a strike, she would publicly state the hair incident was minor, that she overreacted, and apologize for wasting everyone's time. Both signed. The agreement was posted to the school's social media within an hour. Now it was real, sanctioned, unavoidable. The wait began. Monday afternoon stretched into Tuesday. Tuesday crawled into Wednesday. The school buzzed with anticipation. Students picked sides. Teachers debated Ashford's decision. Parents called with concerns. Betting pools got serious. Real money changed hands. Gianna kept to her routine. Class, library, home. She didn't respond to questions, didn't acknowledge stares, didn't engage with anyone hyping Friday's showdown. Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Sterling caught her after physics class. "Gianna, wait!" She stopped by the door. Mr. Sterling was one of the few teachers who'd never ignored Brock's comments. He'd sent him to the office twice last semester. "You don't have to do this. What Brock did was assault. You don't owe anyone a performance." "I know," Gianna said. "Then why?" She thought about it. "Because everyone's watching now. If I back down, he wins anyway. If I show up, I control what happens next. And what happens next? I teach a lesson, the way my grandmother taught me." Mr. Sterling studied her face. Something in her tone made him pause. "You're not scared at all?" "No, sir." "Should Brock be?" Gianna almost smiled. "That's up to him." She left before he could ask more. Brock spent the week preparing like he was training for championships. He watched street fight videos with Dax and Wyatt. He practiced going easy in wrestling so it would look like he gave Gianna a fair chance. He planned exactly how he'd move, how he'd let her tire out, how he'd make it competitive before finishing it. "The key is making it look close," he told his friends Thursday night. "If I destroy her in 10 seconds, I look like a bully. If it goes the full round and she just can't land anything, I look like the good guy." "You think she'll last the full round?" Wyatt asked. "Doesn't matter. Either way, I win." Brock grinned. Tomorrow everyone sees what happens when someone challenges me. He posted a video Thursday night. Ready for tomorrow, no hard feelings. Just defending my reputation. May the best person win. 15,000 views in 2 hours. Gianna didn't post anything. She went to her aunt's basement after dinner Thursday and trained alone. Kata, breathing exercises, meditation. She moved through forms she'd practiced 10,000 times. Her phone kept buzzing. Students asking if she was nervous, people offering advice, some sending threats, some sending support. She turned her phone off. Friday was 12 hours away. Tomorrow, the entire school would gather in the gymnasium. Tomorrow, Brock Hartley would step into the ring thinking he knew exactly how this would end. Tomorrow, everyone would learn what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. Tuesday evening, Gianna sat alone in her room, touching what was left of her hair. The apartment was small but clean. Her aunt worked late shifts at the hospital, so most nights Gianna had the place to herself. Her room was simple. Bed, desk, bookshelf. But one wall was different. Photos covered it, newspaper clippings, certificates, tournament brackets, podium photos, a girl in a white G holding medals. The images were faded, tucked in the corner where visitors wouldn't notice them. Gianna hadn't looked at that wall in months. Tonight, she stood in front of it. There was her grandmother, Althea, standing next to 10-year-old Gianna at her first tournament, both smiling with pride. Another photo, Gianna at 14, mid-kick, face fierce with concentration and power. A newspaper clipping, local youth dominates regional championship. A certificate, junior national karate champion, 3 years in a row. Gianna traced her finger over her grandmother's face in the photo. 8 months since pancreatic cancer took her. 8 months since Gianna's entire world collapsed. Her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. Grandmother Althea raised her alone after that. Taught her everything, how to braid her hair on Sunday mornings, how to stand straight when the world pushed down, and how to fight. Althea put Gianna in karate at age 9. You've got fire in you, baby. We need to teach that fire some discipline before it burns you up. Gianna was angry back then. Angry about her parents, angry at everything. She'd fight at school, throw tantrums, break things when frustrated. Karate gave her control. Her grandmother sat in the dojo during every practice, every tournament, every belt test. Those sharp eyes that missed nothing. After practice, driving home, she'd always say the same thing. Real strength is knowing you can destroy someone and choosing not to. That's power, Gianna. Remember that. Gianna remembered everything, every lesson, every word of wisdom, every Sunday morning when Grandmother Althea braided her hair while telling stories about their family, about resilience, about dignity. The braid Brock cut off had been the last one her grandmother did. 2 days before she died, weak from chemo but determined, Althea called Gianna over. Come here, baby. Let me do your hair one more time. Gianna sat on the floor between her grandmother's knees like she'd done 1,000 times before, felt those familiar hands sectioning and weaving with practiced care. You're going to be fine without me, Althea whispered. You're strong, stronger than you know. I don't feel strong, Gianna said. That's because you're measuring wrong. Strong isn't about muscles or wins. Strong is choosing grace when you have every right to choose violence. 3 days later, she was gone. Gianna moved to Westfield to live with her aunt, left behind her dojo in her hometown, left behind her sensei who'd trained her since she was 9, left behind her friends, her team, her identity as a 3-time national champion. She packed her medals in a box and never took them out again. She stopped training publicly, stopped competing, stopped being that person entirely. At Westfield, nobody knew who she was. Nobody knew what she could do. That felt safer somehow. She wanted to be invisible, get through senior year without drawing attention, without explaining about her grandmother or her parents or why she looked sad sometimes. But invisible, she'd learned, just meant ignorable. Gianna turned from the wall and went downstairs to the basement. Her aunt had cleared space down there without being asked, put down foam mats, hung a heavy bag in the corner, never said anything about it, just made the space available. Gianna changed into training clothes and stood in the center of the mat. She started with breathing. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. The rhythm her sensei drilled into her from day one. The rhythm that controlled everything else. Then she moved into kata. Forms she'd practiced 10,000 times. Each movement precise, economical, no wasted energy. Her body remembered even when her mind didn't want to. Her phone buzzed on the bench. Another message. Another video of Brock talking about Friday. Another comment calling her stupid. She ignored it and kept training. An hour passed. Her aunt came home from her shift and called down the stairs. "Don't stay up too late, honey." "I won't." But Gianna trained for another hour after that. She worked the heavy bag. Palm strikes, elbow strikes, kicks. Each one controlled, measured, perfect. The calluses on her knuckles had softened over 6 months of not training seriously, but they were still there. The muscle memory was still there. Everything was still there. She just hadn't used it. Wednesday night, 2 days before the showdown, her aunt came down to the basement while Gianna was training. "Baby, we need to talk." Gianna stopped mid-kick and turned. "What's up?" Her aunt looked worried. She'd seen the videos, heard the talk around town. "You don't have to do this. You could just let it go." "I can't." "Why not? Why does it matter?" Gianna walked to the bench and sat down, breathing hard. "He didn't just cut my hair. He cut it because he thought he could. Because he's always been able to, because nobody ever stops him." "So you're going to stop him?" "I'm going to show him that quiet doesn't mean weak, that not responding immediately doesn't mean not caring." Her aunt noticed the medals then, sitting in the box on the storage shelf. She walked over and picked one up. "Baby, you never told me about these. I didn't want to be that person anymore. I wanted to be normal. And now?" Gianna thought about it. "Now I realize being yourself is better than being invisible." Her aunt sat next to her on the bench. "Your grandmother would be proud of you. You know that, right?" "Would she? I'm about to fight someone in front of the whole school." "You're about to teach someone a lesson about respect. There's a difference." Her aunt put the medal back carefully. "Just promise me you'll be safe." "I promise." Thursday night, the night before everything, Gianna called her old sensei. He answered on the second ring. "Gianna, I heard what happened." "How did you hear?" "Your aunt called me, asked if I knew you were still training." "I haven't been. Not really. Not until this week." "And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow I remind everyone who I am." Her sensei was quiet for a moment. "Your grandmother used to say something to me after your tournaments. She'd say, 'That girl has more control in her pinky than most adults have in their whole body.' She was right then. She's still right now." "I miss her," Gianna said quietly. "I know you do, but she's still with you. In every technique she watched you perfect. In every lesson she taught you about discipline. In every moment you choose grace over rage." "What if I mess up tomorrow?" "You won't. Not because you're perfect, but because you've been training for this your entire life. Not training for some boy in a gymnasium, training for the moment when you'd have to decide who you really are." After they hung up, Gianna stood in front of her wall one more time. She looked at the photos, the certificates, the newspaper clippings, the girl she used to be. Then she took the medals out of the box and put them on her desk where she could see them clearly. Tomorrow, everyone would learn the truth. Tomorrow, she'd stop hiding. Friday, 3:45 p.m. The gymnasium was packed. Over 200 students crammed into the bleachers. More lined the walls. Teachers stood near the exits. Vice Principal Ashford watched from the doorway with his arms crossed. The center of the gym had been cleared. Coach Ramsey set up a marked area with tape on the floor. Protective headgear and mouth guards sat on a folding table. A timer, a whistle. Phones were everywhere, every angle covered. Students had been streaming in since 3:30. The energy felt electric, dangerous. People were still placing bets. The consensus remained clear. Brock would win easily. "She's going to get destroyed," someone said loudly. "This is going to be hard to watch." 3:55 p.m. The crowd noise rose suddenly. Brock had arrived. He entered through the main doors with his entire crew, Dax and Wyatt flanking him, other football players trailing, the cheerleaders, his entourage. Someone had brought a Bluetooth speaker. Music started playing. Brock walked to the center like he was entering a championship fight. He waved to the crowd, grinned at the cameras, shadowboxed for effect. Students who'd bet on him cheered, chanted his name. "Brock! Brock! Brock!" He ate it up, did a little spin, flexed, played to every phone pointed at him. Coach Ramsey looked unimpressed. "Enough! Music off!" The music stopped, but Brock kept smiling, kept working the crowd. He pulled off his hoodie to reveal a tank top that showed off his wrestling-built shoulders. 200 pounds of muscle and confidence. 3:58 p.m. The gym doors opened again. Gianna walked in alone. No entourage, no music, no fanfare, just her, wearing plain black training clothes, carrying a small gym bag. The noise in the gymnasium dropped immediately. Something about the way she moved made people stop talking. She walked with perfect posture, each step deliberate and controlled. She didn't look at the crowd, didn't acknowledge the phones, didn't show any expression. She walked straight to Coach Ramsey. "I'm here," she said simply. "You sure about this?" "Yes, sir." Brock called across the space. "Glad you showed up. Thought you might chicken out." Gianna didn't respond. She set her bag down and started stretching. Simple movements, nothing showy, but the precision caught attention. The way she moved was different, economical, no wasted motion. Coach Ramsey called them both to the center. "Listen up, I'm in charge here. This ends when I say it ends." They both nodded. 3-minute round. First clean strike to the body that I confirm ends it immediately. No strikes to the face, throat, or groin. You break the rules, you forfeit. Clear? "Clear," Brock said. "Clear," Gianna said. "Protective gear on." They both geared up. The headgear made them look official, serious. Coach Ramsey had them stand at opposite ends of the taped area. Brock bounced on his toes, shaking out his arms, still smiling, still confident. Gianna stood perfectly still, hands at her sides, breathing slow and controlled. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. The gymnasium went silent. Coach Ramsey raised his hand. 3, 2, 1. He blew the whistle. Brock came forward immediately. He moved like a wrestler, hands up high, pressure forward. His first move was a wide overhand right, throwing it hard. Gianna stepped offline, not back, offline. Her feet moved at a perfect angle, shifting her body just enough that his punch passed through empty air. She didn't counter, just moved and reset. Brock threw again, a jab this time, faster. Gianna's head tilted slightly. The punch missed by inches, still no counter. Brock threw a combination, jab, cross, hook, each punch committed, each one trying to find her. Gianna moved like water, subtle shifts of her head, small steps that took her out of range. She didn't block, didn't parry. She just wasn't there when the punches arrived. 30 seconds in, Brock was already breathing harder than he expected. Gianna's breathing hadn't changed at all, still that same 4-count rhythm. The crowd started to notice. Is she even trying? She hasn't thrown a single punch. Brock noticed, too. It frustrated him. He was supposed to be landing shots. She was supposed to be defending desperately. Instead, he couldn't touch her. He threw harder, faster, a spinning back fist that would have knocked her out if it landed. Gianna ducked under it smoothly. Still no counter. 1 minute in. Brock was sweating now, his breathing getting heavy. Gianna looked like she was barely paying attention. Her eyes were half-lidded, almost meditative. But she saw everything, reacted to everything. The crowd noise changed. The chanting for Brock faded. Murmurs started. How is she doing that? She's making him miss everything. Tessa leaned forward, phone now recording. Oh my God, she's playing with him. Brock heard some of the comments. It made him angrier. He abandoned technique and just threw everything. Wild hooks, haymakers, desperate combinations. Gianna kept moving, kept evading. Her footwork was surgical, always at the perfect angle, always just out of range. At one point, she stopped moving entirely, just stood there, hands at her sides. Brock threw a massive overhand right with everything he had. Gianna swayed. Her upper body moved maybe 6 inches. The punch passed her face so close that students gasped, but it didn't touch her. She looked at Brock and spoke for the first time. You're tired. Breathe deeper. The crowd went insane. Did she just coach him? She's giving him advice while he's trying to hit her. Brock's face went red. Shut up! He lunged forward, throwing a sloppy combination. Coach Ramsey was watching intently now. He recognized what he was seeing. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. 2 minutes. The round was almost over. Brock was breathing in gasps. His arms felt heavy. Every punch took more effort, and she just kept moving, kept evading, kept making him look foolish. The whistle blew. End of round 1. Brock stumbled back to his corner where Dax and Wyatt waited. Bro, what are you doing? Dax said. Just rush her. I'm trying, Brock panted. She won't stay still. You're letting her make you look stupid. Across the gym, Gianna sat calmly. She took a small sip of water, closed her eyes. Her breathing hadn't changed. The crowd was buzzing now, students replaying footage on their phones. She's not even breathing hard. Look at him, he's exhausted. Mr. Sterling stood against the wall. He leaned over to a colleague. That's world-class technique. She's been formally trained for years. Then why is she here? I don't know, but Brock has no idea what he challenged. Coach Ramsey gave them 30 seconds, then called them back to the center. Round 2, same rules. Ready? Brock nodded, still breathing hard. Gianna stood and walked back to her starting position. She adjusted her stance slightly. Traditional karate stance, weight slightly forward, hands positioned differently. She was done demonstrating. Now she was going to teach. The whistle blew. Brock charged immediately, trying to use his size to overwhelm her. Gianna flowed around him like he was moving through water. Every attack redirected. Then she started countering. Light touches, control shots. Her hand tapped his shoulder as she moved past. Could have been his throat. Could have ended it. But she pulled the strike. Tapped to his ribs as he overextended. Could have been solar plexus. She held back. Tapped to his bicep. Could have been his head. She chose not to. Each touch was a statement. Each one said clearly, I could end this whenever I want. The crowd realized it at the same moment. The noise changed from entertainment to something else. Awe. Respect. She's a professional. She's been going easy on him the whole time. She could have finished this in 10 seconds. He challenged someone completely out of his league. Students were filming differently now. This wasn't a fight. This was a documentary. Mr. Sterling pulled out his own phone. I need to record this. 90 seconds into round 2. Brock was completely gassed, completely frustrated, completely humiliated. Everyone was watching him get dismantled by someone he'd thought was weak. He threw one last desperate haymaker, put everything into it, all his strength, all his anger. Gianna caught his wrist mid-air. Time seemed to stop. She held his arm there, suspended, her grip gentle but absolutely unbreakable. He tried to pull away, couldn't. Tried to throw with his other hand. She waited. The entire gymnasium was silent. 200 people, not one sound. Gianna looked Brock directly in the eyes. You're strong, she said quietly. But strength without control is just flailing. His other hand was still raised, ready to throw. Do it, she said, or put your hand down. His arm trembled, from exhaustion, from emotion, from the weight of everyone watching. Slowly he lowered his hand. His legs gave out, not from any hit, from exhaustion, from reality crashing into him. He sank to his knees. Gianna released his wrist gently. Coach Ramsey blew the whistle. Match over. Winner, Gianna Ingram. But there was no celebration, no triumphant music, just silence and the sound of 200 students trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Brock stayed on his knees. His chest heaved. Sweat dripped onto the gymnasium floor. His hands were on his thighs because his legs couldn't support him anymore. The entire school watched in silence. Gianna stood in front of him, still in her stance, still breathing controlled, like the last 3 minutes hadn't affected her at all. Coach Ramsey stepped forward. Match is over. Winner by... Wait! Gianna's voice cut through the silence. Gianna looked down at Brock. Stand up. Brock looked up, exhausted. I can't. Yes, you can. Stand up. Something in her tone wasn't cruel. It was firm but not unkind. Brock struggled to his feet, swaying slightly, completely spent. Gianna studied him. Then she spoke loud enough for everyone. You challenged me because you thought I was weak. You cut my hair because you thought I wouldn't respond. You've done this to others because you've never faced real consequences. Brock didn't argue, just stood there breathing hard. I could have hurt you, badly, in the first 10 seconds. I could have ended this before it started. The gymnasium stayed silent, every phone still recording. But that's not what strength is. That's not what my grandmother taught me. Her voice softened slightly, but still carried to every corner. She taught me that real strength is knowing you can destroy someone and choosing not to. Real strength is showing mercy when you have every right to show none. Brock's eyes were on the floor now. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer honestly, not for me, for everyone here, for yourself. She waited until Brock looked up. Why did you cut my hair? The question hung in the air. Brock opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I thought it would be funny. That's not why. That's the excuse. Why did you really do it? Brock was quiet for a long moment. The silence stretched, heavy. Then finally, the truth. Because I could, he said quietly. Because nobody stops me. Because my dad's on the school board and teachers don't do anything and everyone just laughs. His voice cracked. Because I thought you wouldn't fight back. I thought you were easy. The gymnasium was so quiet you could hear breathing. Gianna nodded slowly. You're right. Nobody stops you. Teachers see it and do nothing. Students see it and say nothing. You forgot it was wrong. She took a step closer. But here's what you didn't know. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Kind doesn't mean pushover. And not responding immediately doesn't mean not caring. Brock looked at her, really looked, for maybe the first time. Who are you? He asked. The question came out broken, genuine. I'm someone who's been training in karate since I was 9. Someone who's won 3 consecutive junior national championships. Someone who competed at the Pan American Youth Games. She watched his face process that. But more than that, I'm someone who lost her grandmother 8 months ago. Someone who moved here trying to be invisible. Her voice got quieter. That braid you cut? My grandmother braided it 2 days before she died. It was all I had left of her. You threw it in the trash like it was nothing. Brock's face crumbled, the weight finally hitting him completely. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. You didn't need to know who I am. You just needed to know I'm human. That's the lesson here. Coach Ramsey stepped forward. Match is officially over. Winner Gianna Ingram. Brock looked at Gianna one more time. I really am sorry. Not because you beat me. Because of what I did. He looked at the crowd. Some students looked away. Gianna took off her headgear. You can still choose to be better, starting now. The gymnasium stayed silent. Then slowly, someone started clapping. Tessa standing in the front row. Another student joined, then another. Within seconds, the entire gymnasium was applauding, not for the fight, not for the victory, for the lesson. The applause faded as students realized what was about to happen. Dax was scrolling on his phone in the bleachers. His face went pale. Holy shit. Look at this. Students around him leaned in, then pulled out their phones. Within seconds, whispers spread through the gymnasium. No way. That's her? Dax stood up. Gianna Ingram, junior national karate champion, 3 consecutive years, gold medal at Pan American Youth Games. He turned his phone to show the crowd. Photos of Gianna on podiums, mid-kick in competition, holding medals, completely different from the quiet girl they'd known. Students passed phones around. Murmurs became a roar. She's nationally ranked. She was basically a professional. Coach Ramsey walked over to Gianna. Why didn't you tell anyone? I didn't want to be that person anymore. I wanted to be normal. Coach Ramsey shook his head. Young lady, I just watched one of the finest demonstrations of martial arts discipline I've ever seen. He turned to address the gymnasium. Gianna could have hurt Brock seriously in the first exchange. Instead, she showed restraint and mercy that most adults don't possess. She could have humiliated you. She chose to teach you instead. Learn from that. Vice Principal Ashford stepped forward. Per the agreement, Brock, you know what comes next. Brock nodded. Can I say something? To everyone? Gianna nodded. Brock faced the bleachers, 200 classmates staring. Gianna, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. I didn't know you were a champion. But that's not the point. I shouldn't have needed to know that. I shouldn't have cut your hair. His voice shook, but he kept going. The truth is, I cut your hair because I thought I could get away with it. Because I've been getting away with stuff like that for years. Because everyone looks the other way. Some teachers shifted uncomfortably. I thought quiet meant weak. I was wrong. His voice got quieter. And I'm sorry to anyone else I've treated like that. The gymnasium was silent. Gianna stepped forward. You don't get to decide someone's value based on whether they fight back. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Kind doesn't mean pushover. And not responding immediately doesn't mean not caring. She looked at Brock, then at the crowd. My grandmother taught me that real strength is choosing not to destroy when you have the power to. That's what I did today. That's what I hope you'll learn. She touched what was left of her hair. She'd want me to tell you it's never too late to choose to be better. How do I fix this? Brock asked. Start by seeing people. Actually seeing them. Not assumptions, not stereotypes, people. Tessa walked over. I should have said something. I saw what he was doing and I didn't. I'm sorry. Say something next time. That's how this changes. Other students approached, some apologizing, some asking about training. Mr. Sterling approached. Why didn't you tell anyone who you were? I wanted to be normal. Turns out being yourself is better than being invisible. The gymnasium slowly emptied. Gianna picked up her bag. Gianna, wait. Brock stood there, exhausted. What dojo do you train at? I think I need to learn. About respect and control. Gianna pulled out her old sensei's card. Tell him I sent you. He'll know what that means. Brock took the card carefully. Thank you for not destroying me when you could have. You can still choose who you want to be, starting today. That weekend, Gianna drove to her old dojo. Her sensei was teaching a class. When he saw her, he smiled. After class, they talked. Your grandmother would be proud, not because you could have hurt him, because you didn't. I miss her. She's still with you, in everything you do. That night, Gianna put her medals back on display. Monday morning at Westfield felt different. Students looked at Gianna with respect. Some nodded. Some said hello. Brock was suspended for 3 days, benched from 2 games, required to write a 5-page essay. Tuesday, someone posted a photo. Brock walking into a karate dojo. Caption, Day 1 of being better. Gianna smiled. Wednesday, Brock returned. He kept his head down, went to classes quietly. His table was smaller. Some friends had distanced themselves. He saw Gianna across the cafeteria and raised his hand in a small wave. She nodded back. 3 weeks later, Ashford announced new protocols for addressing bullying. A student-led diversity committee formed. Speakers came to discuss microaggressions and inclusion. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Gianna started training regularly again. She looked into local competitions. Maybe she wasn't done competing. Mr. Sterling asked if she'd speak to his class about discipline. She agreed. She was done being invisible. 2 months later, Gianna was studying in the library when someone sat across from her. Brock. Can I talk to you? She closed her book. Okay. I've been going to classes 3 times a week. Karate. My sensei doesn't let me get away with anything. Good. I wrote letters to people I've hurt. Some wrote back. Some didn't. But I sent them. Gianna nodded. I know sorry isn't enough. I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying every day. That's all anyone can do. Brock stood to leave, then turned back. Your grandmother sounds amazing. She was. I think she'd be proud of you. Gianna felt her throat tighten. Thank you. After he left, she thought about her grandmother, about the lessons taught, about choosing grace over rage. She pulled out her phone and looked at their photo from her first tournament. I hope you're proud, Grandma, she whispered. Somewhere, she felt like her grandmother was smiling. The story didn't end with a fight in a gymnasium. It ended with a lesson that rippled outward, with one girl choosing mercy when she had every right to choose violence, with one boy taking first steps toward becoming better, with a school that would never look at quiet the same way again. Sometimes the hardest fights are the ones where you choose not to swing, and sometimes those are the ones that actually change things.
This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of what happens when truth meets visibility. At Beat Stories, we believe exposure is the first step to transformation. Subscribe and stay tuned, because the next story might be yours.